It is said that in America, about 13.9% have a cognitive disability. Despite the significant population, the depiction of disability in video games is far in between. So today, I will highlight one of my favorite game franchises, the Hellblade series, which consists of Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice and Senua Saga Hellblade 2. These two games have a strong emphasis on the experience of one dealing with psychosis. So I'll be sharing about number 1, the history behind the development of the franchise, number 2, my thoughts about both Hellblade games, and number 3, last but not least, how they motivate me to become a better person. Let's check it out. So in 2014, Ninja Theory announced Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice, and in between the time when they announced Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice to the point in 2017 when they actually released Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice, they did a lot as far as the development of Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice, and the goal of developing Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice was very simple. It was to create a real-life depiction of psychosis and where it can hopefully help others to understand and empathize with them better. And so what Ninja Theory did was they went out of the way to partner with Welcome, which is a global charitable foundation, and where they also worked closely with Paul Fletcher, who is a professor at Cambridge University in the UK, and where Paul specialized in health neuroscience and psychosis. On top of that, Ninja Theory also worked very closely with a psychosis recovery group in which the group shared their experience dealing with psychosis. Since the recovery group are people that actually experience psychosis, they gave valuable information to help Ninja Theory develop the Hellblade franchise to bring about a better depiction about psychosis. Now, as far as the audio quality of Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice as well as Senua Saga Hellblade 2, the Hellblade franchise, Ninja Theory used 3D binaural recordings, which helps gamers to get fully immersed and where they can feel the voices of going about in the various hallucinations and where the Furies talk to her as if they were talking to the person in real life, basically depicting what it feels like as if each individual who plays the Hellblade franchise actually had psychosis. And they also included real-time motion capture tech, which is also really submersive as well. There's a whole bunch of different diaries about Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice as well as Senua Saga Hellblade 2 that you can look online if you want to see more details on the history behind the development of both masterpieces. But basically, Ninja Theory just wanted to make a game where not only are there disabled characters in the video games, but that it clearly depicts the struggles that those individuals face as well as help other people to understand them better. So now that the brief history of the Hellblade franchise is out of the way, let's talk about the games themselves. I'm going to start with Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice since that's the first game. So as far as Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice goes, as far as you playing it on the Steam Deck, the default settings, unfortunately, in my experience, does not work at all. I kid you not, as I boot up the game and start in the opening scene, I was stuck in single-digit frames per second, so it was really not optimal and where I knew that I had to do some adjustments. So as far as my Steam Deck settings goes, I always keep my frame limit at 45 FPS at 90 Hz. But as far as the tinkering graphics settings goes, I ended up with setting quality to custom, foliage to medium, post-processing to medium, shadows to medium, keeping textures high, having the view distance as medium, having view effects as medium, VSync off, high dynamic range off, ray tracing off, AMD FSR as balanced, DirectX API set to DirectX 12, and honestly, this was very manageable. I was able to play Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice with these settings, and I got a stable 45 FPS for the most part, though at some spots it is harder to run the game and it will tank down to, the 30s FPS. So the thing about Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice, just to keep you guys informed, is that there is some tinkering that needs to be done to make the game optimal in order for you to enjoy. Now, as far as what I love about Hellblade Senua Sacrifice gameplay-wise. I really love the 3D binaural audio that Ninja Fury gave in the game. The 3D binaural audio, even when I don't use my headphones, because I don't typically use that when I play on handheld mode, even without that, I personally felt fully submerged in the Hellblade universe. It really felt as if I was Senua. It really felt as if I was the person who was dealing with psychosis. The hallucinations, the furies, all those voices that come in the game, it really felt so real to me. And it really felt I was really the person that the voices were talking to me. It did not feel like it was a voice that came from the game. Now, another thing that I really love about the game is how they also have a variety of different terrains in the game. 1 minute you could be at the seashore, another minute you could be in the dark caves, another minute you could also be lighting up a torch, navigating a really dark area. The look and feel of all these various terrains just brings about a variety of different emotions and different ways of looking at life, both physically as well as metaphorically. Now, as far as puzzles go in Hellblade Senua Sacrifice, I really love them, whether it is going about finding those different rune symbols in Norse mythology and then using focus to look around the environment to find the matching symbol, and where find the matching symbol can vary from finding a shadow that matches the symbol or going about looking at every hair of the grass, every tiny bit of structure on the building, and where you find something that matches and shapes like the rune symbol. All that, as well as, looking around and seeing bits and pieces of broken structures and angling Senua to look at a specific perspective while using focus to fix the different structures to progress in the game. These puzzles, in my opinion, further highlights the experience of living with psychosis, because in my opinion, when I use the focus on Senua, it makes me imagine as if I am seeing something in which outsiders don't see. It is all something from my perspective and delusional. The only thing I will say about the puzzles, in my opinion, is that some of them can be a bit tricky, and if you are somebody who is not good at details, not good at looking at every hair of the grass, not good at paying attention to every bits and pieces, even to the speck, some of the puzzles may be challenging, so that is something in which I will have to warn you. Another thing that I really love about Hellblade Senua Sacrifice is them introducing illusion gates. Illusion gates basically, when you walk through it, it will change the environment of the game, and where, certain areas which used to be blocked off as certain parts in the environment are no longer blocked off, and certain areas that used to be open for you to access are suddenly blocked off. Illusion gates, it just brings about this variety. It brings about you going about thinking about what to do in order to solve the different puzzles, and it just brings about this extra spice, in my opinion, as I go about it, where the puzzles are not so straightforward and where I have to pay attention and be strategic on how I can progress and solve the different puzzles that are needed to be solved. Now, as far as combat goes in Hellblade Senua Sacrifice, I also really love fighting those different enemies, more so about how Ninja Fury presents those different enemies. I love fighting those various huge monsters, as well as also fighting those distorted Norsemen and other figures, which, in my opinion, when fighting those distorted figures, it makes me feel less of an actual battle that you face in reality, but a mental battle, except it is depicted in reality. And another thing that I love about Hellblade Senua Sacrifice is the inclusion of lore stones, which basically are poles, and where when you activate them, you will hear a bit about the lore and story and the background of the game, and that's something that I really love, especially in games like these, which are very rich in story. Now, as far as Hellblade Senua Sacrifice goes, there are a whole bunch of different soundtracks that I really enjoy. So today I will be sharing my favorite pick from the various soundtracks, and that is none other than Trials of Odin, which is composed by David Garcia Diaz. David Garcia Diaz, he has composed music for various games. One notable game that David Garcia Diaz composed was Deadlight back in 2012. Now, as far as Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice the story goes, you play as Senua, where she is a picked warrior and where she must go on this journey to Helheim to retrieve the lost soul of her significant other from her goddess. And throughout the journey, she has to also battle psychosis. At first, Senua thought that the psychosis was a curse, but later on accepts that psychosis is part of her, that psychosis is something that she herself has, and that she can live with it, and that she accepts that she is not the problem to cause all the darkness around her to unfold, that she is not the problem to cause all the deaths around her, including her love, and that she can literally live her life to her fullest, that she can be Senua, that she can be a powerful person. It is a very emotional game as far as the story goes. So now that we talked about Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice, let's move on to Senua's Saga Hellblade 2. Now, as far as Hellblade 2 goes, normally I won't recommend you to play it on the Steam Deck. If you have a more high-end PC that you use, it's much better to experience Senua Saga Hellblade 2 over there instead. However, if you are somebody who just has a Steam Deck and that is your only way to play games, then that is still fine. Hellblade 2, even though it is listed as unsupported, but with the proper settings, you will still be able to manage and play Hellblade 2 from start to finish. There will be no problems with that whatsoever. So as far as Hellblade 2, as far as the settings go with the Steam Deck OLED, which is capped at 45 frames per second and 90 Hz, I set the resolution to 1280 by 800, the custom upscaler to AMD FSR3, the upscaler quality mode to balanced, sharpness to 30, high dynamic range off, gamma at 50, vertical sync off, variable rate shading on, global preset as low. And I will say this, sadly, the game will linger around the 20s FPS, so like I said, I won't recommend Hellblade 2 on the Steam Deck in general, but at the same time, it technically is playable. At least for me, when I play it, I never encountered any major issues, and I was still able to play Hellblade 2 on my Steam Deck from start to finish. Now, as far as the overall gameplay goes with Hellblade 2, I personally have mixed feelings. I love how Ninja Fury kept with having the lore stones. They are still a great additional thing for me to understand the story better and understand more about the background of it. However, I did not like how they nerfed Senua. There are a lot of moves that Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice had in which it is no longer available in Hellblade 2, and where it is more focused on one-on-one fights. Sure, there are times where you see multiple enemies, but at the same time, once I defeat one enemy and I go to the next enemy, it really just feels in a weird way that it is a duel after duel, rinse and repeat. However, what I really love about the enemies in Hellblade 2 is that there are a much bigger variety of different enemies that have different unique abilities. One of the enemies that I really loved in Hellblade 2 is an enemy where it breathes out fire to burn Senua. And then another thing that I really love about Hellblade 2 more than Hellblade 1 is how Ninja Fury somehow figures out to make the game have a better balance between solving puzzles as well as engaging in combat. The first game started out where you have a whole bunch of puzzles back to back and where there is not much fighting in the beginning. The thing about Hellblade 2 is that I find that even though there are puzzles, there are also fighting, but at the same time, it really feels as if it is not back to back, where there is too much repetition and it causes me to have boredom. It really feels as if Ninja Fury made a great balance between fighting and solving the different puzzles. Now, Now, speaking of the puzzles in Hellblade 2, what I really love about the puzzles particularly is the inclusion of the orb puzzles. The orb puzzles are basically the ones where when you activate the orb, it will change the environment and where it will help you progress to get closer to the spots where you can solve the different puzzles or progress in the story. It just brings about this extra spice in Hellblade 2. As well as what I love about the orb puzzles, speaking of it, is that there are also this thing as the hidden folk puzzles. And the hidden folk puzzles, I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but they are lengthy puzzles, which basically is what I like to say trial sequences, where in these puzzles you will discover a stone pillar and where you will have to go around the environment to find those stones and insert them into the slots of the pillars. Most of the pillars involve 3 different stones that you find around the environment and where you have to put them in order to activate it and progress in the game. But in the process of finding those different stones, they are not obvious. A lot of times when finding those different stones, before doing that, you will have to activate certain orbs in order to access certain areas that you could not access at the specific dimension, and where when activating those different orbs, it will grant you the access point to get to the spot where you can be able to obtain a stone and bring it back to the pillar to put it into the slot to activate it and continue on with the game. It just feels, in my opinion, that the puzzles are better, and I love how Ninja Theory incorporate more puzzles that brings about the extra spice, but in the meantime it brings about this type of illusion aspect as well, because once again, Psychosis involves these illusions about seeing the world differently from what normal people will see, and having the ability to have these puzzles incorporated in a creative way where you go into a different dimension and access different stuffs and solve the different puzzles. It brings about another aspect of the look and feel of people dealing with psychosis. Now, Hellblade 2 also has really great music. It also brings about the immersion of the game as well. So today I will be sharing my favorite music from Hellblade 2, and that is none other than Wisdom Has a Price by David Garcia Diaz. David Garcia Diaz, as I mentioned before in the soundtrack spotlight for Hellblade 1, David Garcia has composed music for various games, and where one of the notable games that he composed for is Deadlight, that was released back in 2012. Now, as far as the story of Hellblade 2 compared to Hellblade 1, I personally don't feel like it is a great comparison as far as the story aspect of the game, because to me they are two different experiences. As far as Hellblade 2, in this sequel we see Senua, who is voluntarily willingly captured by slavers in order to have them get her to the place where she could set her people free. Now, unfortunately, as far as them going on this voyage on the ship, there was a massive storm that basically wrecked the ship and washed Senua herself ashore. As she goes about and navigates the land and where she meets the slave master and fights and defeats the slave master, she basically forces the slave master to lead her to his village. Now, though initially the goal was just to free her people, throughout the journey with her and the slave master and the people that they meet and free along the way, Senua's mission becomes much more meaningful than just going there to free her people. Now, as far as why I say that I cannot really compare about whether or not I like the Hellblade 2's story better than Hellblade 1's story, is because, in my opinion, Hellblade 2 has a different emphasis. Hellblade 1, in my opinion, we see Senua going on this solo journey, and where she finds healing, and where she accepts her disability, and where she sees it not as a curse, but as something that is part of her, as that is part of her identity. As far as Hellblade 2 goes, it feels more so that she is now a strong woman, and where she basically becomes as a leader to help other people who are tied down, other people that are bound, other people that are tormented, and help save them and help them to find healing. It really is two different perspectives in my opinion, and where you cannot compare both of them to say which one is better. Both of them, in my opinion, are impactful in their own way. Hellblade 1, more impactful in personal journey for breakthrough. Hellblade 2, a journey about helping others get breakthrough. It is a big difference in my opinion, and where they cannot be compared to each other. Now, since Hellblade 2's full name is actually Senua Saga, Hellblade 2, I believe that potentially Ninja Theory might make another Hellblade game in the future. Now, with that being said, I want to discuss my predictions about Hellblade 3, what I hope to see, as well as what might happen. And FYI, this section may contain spoilers, so if you don't want to be spoiled, it'll be best to skip this section. So, as far as Hellblade 2 goes, I will say that the ending felt complete, but at the same time, it also felt open-ended. When Hellblade 2 ended, we see Senua help free the people from the bondage and give people hope where they are no longer bound by the chains of the gods. And in that sense, it could be complete, because throughout the two games, we see Senua accepting her psychosis and now freeing other people that are in bondage. That itself could be a success story that is potentially complete. However, we can also see that it is also incomplete because there is much more to talk in terms of what Senua may potentially do next. At the end, after defeating the final boss, Senua becomes the leader of the Iceland Vikings. And according to historical accounts, they suggest that in the 9th century, the Iceland Vikings, they originated from various Scandinavia countries, especially Norway. And back in the 9th century, the Scandinavians were huge on raiding, as well as some of them practicing human sacrifices to appease the different gods. So it would be nice to see Senua in Hellblade 3 potentially stopping the sacrifices and healing those tormented, those that are bound by those different gods, those that are bound to feel like they have to please those different gods to offer those human sacrifices, and bound by those different rituals, to have Senua be the savior to set them free from the different rituals. That's what I hope to see, and that's what I feel like potentially that could be a direction Ninja Theory goes for. Normally, I would think that they can do a spiritual successor, but at the same time, since it is labeled as Senua's Saga, it is best to believe that the next game and all these games going forward with Hellblade to all incorporate Senua. Now, as far as gameplay-wise improvements goes, I personally will love to have more submersion with the game. I would love to see if Ninja Theory could potentially make Hellblade 3 as a game in which you could choose two different options. You could choose number 1 to play in first person, or number 2 play in third person. The reason why I say that is because I feel like if we want a game where it is heavily depicting disability, in this case psychosis, I would love to have a much more submerging experience with it. And what better way to make it more submersive is to play in first person, to experience it as if it is your own, not just controlling a character and feeling the surroundings with 3D binary audio, but also playing it as if it is your own, playing it on your device and seeing the screen as if it is from my naked eye. That's what I really hope to see if they were to do a Hellblade 3. And also what I really love to see in Hellblade 3 is the inclusion of more weapons. Specifically, what I really want to see is Senua be able to carry bow as well as an arrow to fight the different enemies. And speaking of enemies, obviously would love to have more enemies with more varieties as well as more unique abilities, unique movesets, and also a lot more of these interesting bosses that Senua can potentially tackle along the way. That is something that I would really hope to see. Let me know in the thoughts below. Would you want to see a Hellblade 3, as well as what do you hope to see if Hellblade 3 becomes a reality? It's just amazing how Ninja Theory went above and beyond to create two masterpieces that raises awareness for mental disability, specifically in psychosis. Now, as far as psychosis, even though I personally am not somebody who is dealing with psychosis, but I'm somebody who deals with autism. And so for me, as somebody who is a disabled individual, I resonate with people with all sorts of disabilities, even if I may not understand people with that particular disability. But at the same time, I'm somebody who loves them for who they are and fully embrace them, even if I don't understand them, even if they don't see things the same way as I do. And so for Hellblade 1 and Hellblade 2, they really helped me to empathize with people with psychosis better. But regardless of what it is, as far as the Hellblade saga, both Hellblade 1 and Hellblade 2, they both taught me on how to believe in myself. They both taught me to listen to the positive influences in me, focus on being positive, having a high self-esteem. As I go about playing in the game and I hear those different voices about them telling Senua that she cannot make it, that she cannot do it, that she is weak, it reminds me of me as an individual with disability. There are times in which I feel that I am less than others, that I am not able to tackle on those different challenges, that I am not good enough, that where it's okay to fail because I have a disability. It is something in which I oftentimes make it as an excuse and treat disability as a crutch. That is something in which I struggled with for many years, but after playing Hellblade 1, playing Hellblade 2, these games motivate me that I have potential, that I can accept my disability, and at the meantime do my best to my fullest potential, strive for excellence. And if I have the capability to, I can possibly serve and motivate other people that struggle with disability and help them to also live their life to the fullest. I may have weaknesses. I may have stuffs in which I cannot compete with other people who are considered the norm. But at the same time, accepting myself, shaping my destiny, focusing on my strengths, and in the meantime serving others to help make an impact, that makes life so much better. That makes life so much more fruitful that way. And also, you know, as somebody who has a dad who deals with Parkinson's, that is something in which is somewhat related to me as well, because people that deal with Parkinson's, even though not everybody with Parkinson's will guarantee to have psychosis symptoms, but there is a good amount of people who have Parkinson's later on developing psychosis, so that will also be a way for me to understand that if in case my dad later on gets psychosis. So with the amazing story where it speaks to me in many different ways, as well as how it tries to depict psychosis as clear as possible and make me have a unique experience, the amazing combat, the amazing puzzles, but at the same time having the puzzles and combat being not so well organized, I will give Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice a 9 out of 10. Now, as far as Senua Saga Hellblade 2, for the story concept as well as the variety of different enemies, but with the enemy fights being not as interesting and also Hellblade 2 not running too well on the Steam Deck, but the story kinda evening out the experience as well as the inclusion of new types of puzzles, I will give Hellblade 2 a rating of 8 out of 10. So to share the mid-ground of the two games, I will give the Hellblade Collection a 8.5 out of 10. But yeah, friends, these are my thoughts about the Hellblade Collection. Let me know in the comment section below, are these games for you? Are you interested in playing the Hellblade games? Have you played it before? What do you love about the Hellblade Collection? We'd love to hear it in the comment section below. If you love this review, there are also other reviews that I do for games, sharing my deep thoughts about it, so feel free to check out the playlist. And as always, if you love gaming lists, gaming reviews, gaming discussions, and everything related to Steam Deck, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe so you'll not miss another video. I try to post Mondays and Fridays around 6 p.m. Pacific time, so stay tuned. Once again, my name is Joey from Nomadic Gaming Guild, and game on!